That's a phrase you probably didn't expect to hear in a review of Powered Speakers, Marketing Dichotomy. Presenting the Pickering Intimidator 1000 Powered Speakers. If these look familiar, that's because these were also sold by Radio Shack from 1990 to 1995 as the Realistic Minimus 0.4 and then later as the Optimus AMX4 speakers. As is usual with the stuff I feature on this channel, I found these at the thrift store, as well as the Handycam I'm using to record this video. And I was curious to see this Pickering name because I own several phono cartridges made by Pickering. They were one of the first companies back in the 1940s creating high-fidelity phono cartridges, and they later merged with the Stanton Company, so a lot of their products were very similar, but they pretty much disappeared by the mid-1980s when CDs started taking over. Pickering phono cartridges pretty much disappeared, and you really didn't see any more products from them until the mid-2000s when they had sort of a mini revival, which is when this phono cartridge was produced. But that is their name and logo, and it really doesn't look anything similar to the Pickering logo on these speakers. And on the back, all it says is Intimidator 1000 Powered Speaker System by Pickering. Doesn't say what Pickering company made this. It doesn't give any more details besides just made in China. So I don't know if this was even a licensed use of the Pickering name. It's hard to tell. But regardless of what name they were sold under, these have a very classic 1980s, early 1990s style to them, with this red pinstripe around the edge of the speaker, the chrome dust cap on the center of the cone, and this font they use for all the writing. I'm not sure what the name of this font is, but I've definitely seen it before. It switches on the top for direct or powered mode, so you can use these also as passive speakers. And they have bass and treble boost switches. It's not a variable control, just on or off for the bass and treble boost. But you notice one thing that's missing, a volume control. So these are completely dependent on the volume of the signal that you're feeding into them. That's the only way you can control the loudness of the sound that comes out of them. There's an input for a 6-volt DC 500 milliamp center negative power supply, or each speaker can run on 2 C batteries, so you need to put 2 batteries in each speaker, and they have this attached 3.5 millimeter 1/8 inch plug on them for connecting to your Walkman or Discman or whatever else you want to plug these into. And these have interlocking plastic teeth, so with some effort you can separate them, and then by the distance of however much cord is here you can separate them. Or if you put them together you can have a shoulder strap, which I think these originally came with, to carry them around. Or it even looks like you can connect individual straps for the left and right speakers. I guess if you want to have one on each shoulder, you could do that too. These have 4-inch drivers, and according to the Radio Shack ad for the Realistic version of these speakers, the amplifier in them is rated at 1.5 watts per channel, which certainly doesn't sound very intimidating. And besides, why didn't they call it the Intimidator 1500 if it's rated at 1.5 watts per channel? And it's certainly a marketing dichotomy when one company sells these as the Minimus 0.4 and another company sells them as the Intimidator 1000. First I'll try them with this portable CD player, which is a little bit odd because it actually kind of looks like a portable DVD player, but when you open up what you would think is the screen, is actually a pair of built-in speakers, but they sound absolutely terrible, as I'll show you here. Even a Crosley Cruiser sounds better than that. So I'll plug in these Pickering speakers. This is the unpowered mode. I don't have any batteries in them, so it's just using the amplifier built into this.
sunlight gone. Everything was fine till the officer's lights went on. Side swept cause he knew I was through. Boy started run cause he didn't know what to do.
I think you'll agree that sounds a lot better.
There's a beautiful girl standing next to you. Do you see her now? Do you see her true?
I could hear a little bit of distortion, but that's probably the limitation of the built-in amplifier in this. It was not meant to drive speakers directly, it was only meant to drive headphones. So now I'm going to put batteries in these speakers and see how much that can improve the sound. Now I put in the finest dollar store Sunbeam zinc chloride batteries, and when I turn on the power switch, you can hear a thump and the little red LED lights up. For now, I'll leave the bass and treble boost switches off, and we'll see how this sounds.
There's a beautiful girl standing next to you. Do you see her now? Do you see her true?
About the same as before, except louder and with less distortion. This is the bass boost turned off. Bass boost turned on. Now the treble boost, off, on, off again, on again. Adding the bass boost. Both off. So the switches certainly do have an effect, but I noticed when you really push the bass output of these speakers, they tend to sound rather flatulent. So it definitely doesn't like the sound of that bass guitar. This camcorder isn't doing it justice, but when I push the amplifier beyond the point of distortion, I can see the power LED dim and flicker in time to the music, so that proves the amplifier in these speakers is really the weak point. But if you don't need them to get that loud, these speakers can actually sound pretty good. And just for another reminder how much better these sound than the built-in speakers of this player. That's really pathetic. Here's a look inside. The drivers were made by Queenwell. Never heard of that name before. They're 4 ohm speakers rated at 2 watts. And there's the amplifier board, quite packed with circuitry. Unfortunately, I couldn't easily get it removed and I didn't want to risk breaking it. But there you can see the speaker outputs. It has Maxcon brand electrolytic capacitors. The cabinets were made of ABS plastic, and that could be a date code, 887. So perhaps these were made in August 1987. But unfortunately, otherwise no real sign of who actually made these speakers for either Pickering or Radio Shack. I still don't think these speakers are befitting of the Pickering name, but regardless of what you call them, they certainly have a vintage look that perfectly matches an early 1990s Walkman or other brand of portable cassette player. So overall, even though they're certainly not intimidating, for what would have been a cheap pair of plastic speakers, they're certainly not bad.